Byron Lanning is here today, and I was so glad when he said yes. He has a passion for native plants, native trees, and we're going to learn more about that today and about what we can do, hopefully a little bit about what you're doing, and learn to do something that will be wonderful in our yard. I need to learn to do, I planted some and now I don't know what to do with them. So you know, I hope to learn all of that.
Well, I don't know how much time you have for all that. Because that's how to, working with gardens and how to manage them and start them, that's a subject.
Another topic, okay.
Yeah. Maybe in the fall, you know, right now it's kind of tough to start a native garden now because the plants are being sold right now, and by June they're pretty much sold out. And with native plants, it's really important to have site preparation. They start very slowly. The first year, 2 years, they grow below the ground. They don't do anything above the ground. So you have to have a site that is pretty weed-free if possible, as much as possible. And by the third year is when they start to come up and start to take over. And once they are established, they're really deep-rooted, unlike non-native plants or decorative plants. These are much deep-rooted, longer-lived, longer-lasting plants, but they take time to establish. And so you can lose them in that first couple of years if you don't have really good site preparation, and if you don't do some mowing or weed whipping or whatever, especially in the first year, to keep the weeds down. You don't have to kill anything or use herbicides per se, but you got to keep it, you know, below 10 inches or so to give them time to get up. So right now, if you haven't planned to do a native gardening, I'm saying you could do it. There are native plants that are annuals or that you can start from seed pretty quickly. Later, this is a partridge pea. This is it's not, it requires about 10 days of stratification. That means that you have to break the seed coating on a native plant seed. They have a tough seed coat that enables them to survive through the winter. And so it requires freezing and thawing over the winter for that seed coat to break. And some plants have to have, you know, two years of hot and cold weather to do this. This one only takes 10 days. You can actually do it even quicker if you take some sandpaper and just scratch the surface of it, just slightly, or you can boil some water, bring it to a boil in a pot, then turn the heat off, let it sit for 30 seconds, throw these seeds in there, and then let them sit in there for overnight or a few hours. And the next morning, you want to plant them right away. So there are, but your options are limited though. There's not a whole lot of plants that do this. So if you want a really vibrant, diverse native plant garden, you would have to, you know, put some, you're going to need more time to throw a garden together. So, but like I said, you could do it, it would be possible, but I wouldn't recommend it per se. So anyway, this is about native plants. I don't. If you have you're already ahead of the game here, Pilgrim. Already, you've already got a pollinator garden out here, and most people are aware of the importance of native plants. So, but I'll give you a basic definition of what is a native plant. It's sort of self-explanatory. The term. So, it's a plant that evolved here in this local area over thousands of years. Probably the epoch called the Holocene, which is the last, when the glaciers made their final retreat. So these plants have been here for 11,000 years or more, perhaps even 13,000 years. And over time, they have evolved together. And they have evolved together or created together through natural process. without human involvement. So they're on their own. They're God's creation, if you want to call it that, evolution, whatever. But as being here that long, in that they've developed relationships with other plants and other animals. Some they're deep relationships, so that they're predator-prey relationships. There's millions of them. We don't even understand all of them yet because it's still rather a new science. Now, I'm going to ask a quick question. We're in the Pilgrim landscape right here. I'll ask you, how many native plants do you think we have in the Pilgrim landscape? 20? How about a percentage? Less than 10%, 5%? Is there 50%?
Less than 10%.
Less than 10? Well, we can name some plants real quick if you want, and they'll tell you if they're native or non-native. For instance, you have a series of yews around the church. Those native or non-native?
Non-native.
Daffodils.
Non-native.
So you guys are pretty up on this. Most early flowering plants that you see, like tulips, whatever, those are all non-native. Native plants are on a different time schedule. So all in all, you will see that there's very few native plants at Pilgrim. But you're actually ahead of the game in a lot of, you have a pollinator garden or a butterfly garden out there. In the parkway, the village has planted several, right out here. There's some hackberries in the front, and there's some elms. I think there's even an American elm on the east side. So you're actually doing better than most landscapes. But it's still, the one that really is sort of hidden in sight is turfgrass. Turfgrass is not native. It's, here's a question for you. Where does Kentucky bluegrass come from? Well, I can just, where does it originate? It doesn't originate from Kentucky. It's an import. It's come from Europe and Asia. And most turf grasses, almost all of them, are imports. So, yes.
But if I want grass, can I get grass?
You mean a native grass, or you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, there are a bunch of native grasses. Native grasses tend to grow in clumps. The ones you see that are for landscape purpose anyway, that are more attractive, are little blue stem and prairie dropseed. There are a couple of people actually use for lawns called buffalo grass or gamma grass, but those tend to like dry sites. I don't know how well they would do here, but so what you have is with native grasses is big clumps. You don't have that even grass. And the turfgrass thing is another story in itself. It actually is a fairly recent phenomenon from the excess phosphorus left over from World War II. So they had all this excess phosphorus. Somebody, like from Scott's fertilizer or whatever, they came up with a brilliant idea to use it for fertilizing lawns. And so it really took off in the post-war period. And it really sort of dominated, especially with suburban landscapes. It just, it became, now my father was one of these followers. He was out there all the time with a lawnmower and killing weeds. And it was, but that's, so it's, the native grasses sort of have a tough time competing against the aesthetics of turf grass. I mean, it's convenient, to maintain, and people love the color of it when it's beautiful, lush, and green. And that is the thing about, so there's very few now. So you ask yourself, well, what happened to all the native plants? Well, human beings got involved. Do they just, in that case, like turf grass, for instance, horticultural industry, agricultural industry, they've all, replaced native plants with non-natives. And non-native plants either have a practical use, like in agricultural crops, for instance, soybeans and things like that, or decorative. The horticulture industry, human beings develop these plants for what they think people will like, and that's usually for symmetry, color, lack of disease, things like that. Whereas native plants are not, they were designed to survive. Looks don't mean anything to them. They were also designed for relationships with other plants and animals. If you're a flower that wants a bumblebee, to pollinate you, you better figure out a way to get that bumblebee to you. So in that case, bumblebees do not see in the red light spectrum. So you don't have a lot of flowers that are in the red, native flowers anyway, that are in the color red. They're mostly white or purple because bumblebees are prolific pollinators. Much more than honeybees. They have something called buzz pollination. When they fly into the corolla of a flower, they just shake, and the pollen is flying everywhere. And it gets stuck all over their legs and bodies, and when they go visit another plant, it's all over, and the same process starts over again. So that's, that's the difference between natives and non-natives, but basically it's human involvement. So we can say, well, there's not that many native plants. So what? Why are native plants important? Well, I just touched on this a little bit already, is that the relationships. Native plants are essential. Non-native plants are decorative. Native plants are essential to the food chain, to the food webs. Without them, we're already in an extinction crisis already because of the lack of native plants. When you hear the term habitat destruction because some plant or animal is threatened or extinct, habitat destruction is basically lack of native plants. And so it's the secret to biodiversity, the essential part of biodiversity. Biodiverse landscapes are resilient. When I say biodiverse, I mean, a wide range of plants and animals. And when something happens, a disturbance, a hurricane, a fire, whatever, they recover quicker. They're more apt. They got more things to depend upon. An agricultural crop is monoculture. When a disease hits that thing, it wipes out everything. We have a bird flu virus going around right now. One chicken in a chicken factory gets the bird virus. They have to kill every chicken in there because it's one huge monoculture. So that is one of the first. The second reason they're important is for carbon sequestration. Prairies and native plants are, like I said, they're extremely deep rooted. They store carbon. They actually store carbon better than forests, depending on the climate and the landscape. Drier areas can't really support forests, like the Great Plains and whatnot, but prairies can thrive there. And prairies, if they're, a mature, undisturbed prairie, is a big carbon sequester. And the third one is flood control, which is something that really important around here. The metropolitan waters would love everybody to have native plants in their garden because the soil structure under a native plant absorbs the water. It seeps in. It doesn't run off. Turf grass is a runway for water. And the more native plants you have like that, the more water goes in the ground and not into the street, into the sewers. So those are the three main reasons why they're so important. Now, it seems like people may be more interested in the gardening part of native plants than why or what we know, and how we got here. So I'll go into more in the gardening if you like. I would say that the things for native gardening, some things you might want to look out for is If you haven't done it before, start small. Start with 20 square feet, 50 square feet. I would also say, don't forget the grasses and sedges. Most people tend to plant forbs, which is the wildflowers. And those are great, but native gardens are dynamic. They have all sorts of insects and birds and whatnot in them, and there's predators in them. And grasses and sedges break up sight lines. They give cover. I mean, monarch butterflies, maybe particularly, they absorb the latex from milkweed. The birds tend not to eat them, but there are plenty of other things that do eat them. Tactic flies, and there's predatory wasps. But you can break up the sight lines. They are not so apt to be found. So, and so that's what I would say. Another one is shrubs. Shrubs are really resilient. They do require some pruning, but the problem with forbs is, like with any form of garden, the more decorative your garden is, the more maintenance you're going to have. So one the other question you'd ask is, how much work do you want to put into this place? You can be on your knees as much as anybody as a non-native gardener. And that's not necessarily bad per se. I mean, gardening is a great exercise. It gets you to squat. And people in third world countries, they squat a lot. They don't have back problems. But unlike, but here, but that is a consideration. If you don't like, gardening, of being on the ground a lot, you might want to consider more grasses, more shrubs, and trees. Trees, they're the downside of shrubs and trees. They do take longer to form and become appealing. But on the other hand, there's a lot less maintenance to them. And I would say, consider that. I mean, I do have some. I have a resource handout where to buy where to buy some of this stuff. The wild ones, the organization I'm associated with, they have a website with a bunch of resources and places to buy native plants and whatnot. You do have more choices than you do years ago. The problem is it's gotten a lot more expensive, but they are more available. Let's see. Oh, yes.
What's a sedge?
Well, yeah. All right. Sedge is it's a green, is grass-like plant, but it is not a grass. The most common ones I see around here are oak sedges and whatnot. You tend to see them more in waterscapes and in rain gardens and things like that. They are similar to grasses, but they are in their own taxonomy, their own family.
If I were to buy it, it would have the word sedge.
Absolutely, yeah. They're classified as sedge. I mean, not grass is a sedge. That's probably a plant that people have often seen in their land. That is a non-native. I don't know how that one got here, but and the difference is, like I said, by looking at the sedge has an edge, the grass is round, and also it will break. The rushes are hollow, but you don't really. Rushes are mainly around lakes and waterways and stuff like that. Now let's see. I lost my.
I'm sorry.
No, and. Yeah, and so you can be as formal. You can be as formal as a non-native garden. There are signers that specialize in native gardens. They'll give you a design. It's much, and it's based on the same principles where they have a focused center, and and there's blooming all year round. They try to do that. And those, you may have, once they're established, they might be a little bit less maintenance, but they would still require a lot of maintenance. And of course, the bigger your garden is, the more work it is. Yeah.
So we live near a forest preserve, and this spring, you noticed that they have come along and cut down a lot of the brush underneath the trees. Is that because they want to control non-native plants?
Yes.
Okay.
That is because of one particular plan. That is buckthorn. I'm a volunteer in the forest reserves. I work a couple of days a week throughout the year, and I'm a basic chainsaw, fellow one, and in the we're about to end, but from the end of summer to April 15th, what all these restoration crews, the volunteer groups do throughout, like at Thatcher Woods, they try to remove buckthorn and bush honeysuckle. This is a invasive species. One thing I did not mention when we were talking about your pilgrim landscape is the presence of invasive species. And there are some here in your landscape, which is not that uncommon because they're invasive. That means they're everywhere. But most people don't know that. You know, some of them are surprising to people that they are invasive. Anyway, the case of buckthorn is Morton Arboretum does a tree census every 10 years, just like the U.S. Census. In the 2020 census, they found that 36% of the tree cover in the Chicago suburban area is buckthorn. It has taken over sections of the forest reserve that nothing grows there but buckthorn. If you walk under it, when it forms a colony, it's just bare dirt where the soil is, and the only thing that grows in there is moss. It's so overwhelming. So that is what they're trying to remove. And that tree came in here in the 1800s as a hedge, a screen privacy. It's particularly bad in the Great Lakes area. I'm from Missouri, and we don't really have much down there. We have our other invasives, but that one is not so prevalent. So that's what they're trying to do. And I've worked at a site in two sites, Wavansie and Brookfield Prairie, they call it, down in North Riverside and Riverside. And these sites are next to subdivisions. And so when we start taking these buckthorn down, we have people coming out there, what the hell are you doing? We were quite successful at removing some of it, so bad that the First Avenue noise was, they all were soundproof for a while. But when we start taking that buckthorn down, they had all the noise from First Avenue coming. They weren't exactly happy about it. But I mean, you had to, and so there was some explanation about it. You know, this is, we do try to replenish. We don't just cut down and try to and let nature grow up. We try to actively put in other species as a barrier or some sort of a privacy natural privacy fence. It takes time to do that, though. And so, yeah, some people will never get over it. But on the other hand, some people are, and once you explain the word like woodlands restoration or something like that, you don't use the word ecosystem per se, because some people don't understand what an ecosystem is. An ecosystem is a group of organisms and the relationships with other organisms and the physical world, that the non-living part of the world. In this case, the temperature. Where you are in latitude. We're at like 40, almost 49 degrees north, something like that here. So the Earth, so we have seasons here. The Earth is on a 23.5 degree tilt. In winter, the sunlight is less direct, you know, so the farther north you go, the less the warm weather you have, the more snow and ice. So that affects what plants and animals can live there, just by that latitude. If you live on the equator, you get 12 hours of sunlight every day. Constant. So that's why you have this huge tropical forest there. It's just conducive for growth and life. So that is, and so what the Forest Reserve is trying to do is ecological restoration. And it's pretty brutal in the beginning. It's not just buckthorn that's a problem, it's several other species as well. And it didn't get that way overnight or in a few years, and it's going to take a lot of years to replenish it. But then, and the ultimate goal is biodiversity.
Could you speak, when you mentioned biodiversity, could you talk a little bit about what a keystone species
Oh,
is?
so it's about invasive species. Invasive species, there's a legal term for this. The Illinois has an invasive species list where it's actually illegal to bring this plant in or plant it. And there's a noxious weed species list. And that's a slightly less onerous. You're not supposed to grow it or whatever, but there's no penalty for it. But you can't be arrested or whatever. A keystone species is the opposite of that. A keystone species is a species that's so important to an ecosystem that if it decreases in population or disappears, that ecosystem becomes so disrupted that it disintegrates and becomes a different ecosystem. And I would say oaks are an example of a keystone species in this area. We have a problem today with oak regeneration. Oaks are not regenerating. They are slowly decreasing, especially white oaks. That is one of the reasons why they're doing the buckthorn removal. When buckthorn takes over an understory, there's no light reaching the forest floor anymore. So oaks need light at the beginning when they're in seedling stages and early growth. So they're trying to thin this forest out, in particular to bring up oak regeneration. I mean, there are other, it can be a forb sometimes, a wildflower that's extremely important, especially in spring. But anyway, it's a group that's, like I said, vital. Let's see, anything else?
So do we have any, well, I know of one, but do we have more than one keystone species?
Yes, it would depend upon what type of ecosystem you're dealing with. I'm trying to think off the top of my head what forms. Goldenrods. I know that's probably and asters. Goldenrods get a lot of blame for allergies and whatnot. They're not the problem for allergies. It's ragweed that causes that. Ragweed is also a native plant. It's also, that one's probably on the, it's either on the noxious weed list, but it's probably on the illegal list because farmers absolutely hate it. It really, it's an annual, it spreads everywhere, it grows 8 to 10 feet tall. If anybody grew up on a farm in the Midwest, they probably have seen it. Yeah, so like I said, asters, goldenrods in the spring. Go ahead, no, it's fine. That's okay. In the spring, there are a lot of spring ephemerals that are really important. Right now, especially, the native plants are starting to come up. And so are nesting bees and stuff like that out of the ground. Most bees nest in the ground, almost all of them really, or either in a cavity in a dead wood or a tree. Honeybees, they're colonizers, they have their own social system. So they come out and the queens come out at this time of year. They've been overwintering. They need food quick, leave. And so the only thing that's available to them right at that time is these spring ephemeral flowers. These are flowers that take advantage of the lack of leaves in trees. And so they soak up that sunlight. And so they sprout up. You'll see it like bloodroot is one, Jacob's ladder, trillium, toothwort. These all, they come up, and by the time geraniums also are considered a spring ephemeral. So, but when leaf cover comes out, then they dissipate. They go into dormancy and go back into the ground and disappear. By this time, there's other flowers out there. And there's more sunlight, and bees then move on to other plants. But that spring time is really critical.
Crocus and snowdrops.
Well, those are non-natives and, yes. Yes, yes. Actually, the crocuses aren't so much a problem. Snowdrops can be a problem. The other one that is the Siberian squirrel, the blue one that comes up.
Yeah.
These are problems in forest reserves. We have, a lot of these plants are lilies. And plants in the lily family are not susceptible to herbicide. So it's very difficult to eradicate them if you have to. You almost have to dig up the bulbs constantly. And so they're a problem in the forest reserves, and they outcompete native and spring ephemerals. And they take, they colonize and they take over an area. And so, but it's not really high on the priority list for the forest reserve because they got so much other stuff. But in my yard, I dig them up. I and throw away the bulbs. I have native plants. I don't want them in there. I don't want I got a redbud tree in the front yard, and I got a bunch of spring ephemerals around it. And the squirrel is from a previous owner, and I don't want them under my redbud tree. Yes.
Is the problem that the bees won't eat from the squirrels, or is it because it's not as beneficial?
Right, they don't have, that is the problem with non-native plants. They don't have a relationship with the plants and animals that are here. Now, over time, I'm sure that, nature is really pragmatic. It won't let a resource go to waste. Eventually, some animal or insect will figure out the key. But for right now, but that may take centuries. It may take thousands of years. And that's the problem with buckthorn. Eventually, some predator or whatever is going to figure that thing out. It's just, when they do, they're hit the jackpot, the biological jackpot. They just all of a sudden have a feast. And eventually that will happen. But in the meantime, it's going to be pretty brutal on some of the plants and animals here, the natives. But there are cases where, like garlic mustard, for instance, this is a plant that was brought in by the colonists for food. It's taken over the understory it's a fork. It could well be in your yard. You don't know about it. It's in the spring. This plant has plagued the eastern United States for decades now, but it's actually in places stopped increasing. There are predators now, some aphids that are going after it. And also the soil seems to be changing and reacting to it. There is a fungus layer in in a native forest. It's called the mycorrhiza. And it's like some people call it the wood web, because trees and shrubs actually transmit water back and forth to each other. There's a communication system going. So it's speculated that the mycorrhiza is changing somehow and slowing down the garlic mustard to a certain degree. I mean, so there are some examples of these non-natives, or these invasives anyway, reaching a point where they're not as invasive. Yeah.
What are the three things we should get rid of from the church garden?
In the church, calorie repair. That is under consideration to be considered illegal import.
What does it look like? Yeah, where is it?
It is a tree.
Where?
You have one on the parkway that the village planted, and there's one in the playground. It's that tree that's leaning up against the tree. It has white flowers. It has a spectacular display for about 2 weeks in the spring. You'll see it on the highways. Now I saw it when I went to Missouri this past week. And you can see it off Highway 55 in places, especially there's a Bilt's nursery right outside of at Will County borderline. And there's a golf course next to it. And you can see all these white flowers now because that nursery, that the trees have spread from that nursery. to the surrounding area. It colonizes. It's spread by birds, just like buckthorn. Birds eat it, they fly away, and then they squirt out the seed somewhere. And so in Missouri, it's absolutely horrible. And it's getting in southern Illinois even worse. And it's slowly spreading here. That's one to get rid of. The other one I noticed is there's Canada thistle behind the U's. But the landscapers seem to cut the thing though, so it doesn't flower too badly. But it spreads rhizomes through the ground. Its roots spread out. That's the other one, and let's see the other one. There's in the pollinator garden. There's goutweed or bishop's cap it's called. That is another spray. That's a ground cover type plant that's really difficult to do. That one's interfering with the pollinator garden. But I think they seem to be more aggressive about maintenance on it now. In fact, years ago, I dug some of it out. Yeah, the only way to get rid of that stuff is really is to slowly dig out the roots. And I don't, let's see, the other one is burning bush. Yes, I know. Yes, that's a common response. I work in Morton Armory and Valley Brother, and we kill that stuff all the time because it's taken over. It's shade tolerant. It gets into the woodlands, and it's not as serious a problem here as as some other parts of the country. In some other parts of the country, it's a thick undergrowth of this stuff. And what it does, same thing, it has in other places, it's bad as at Tower Hill. It's all over Tower Hill. It's in the woodlands to a certain degree there. I would say, like I said, I'm with Wildwoods. We have an invasive tree training. You kill an invasive species, we'll give you a native shrub or tree that they would qualify. Yeah.
That's a good.
Yes, I did. Squirrel, yeah.
What was that?
Siberian squirrel, the little blue flower. I wouldn't say they're terrible they're not critical yet, but they are a problem in places.
But are they, I mean, let's, if they're growing in somebody's yard,
Yeah.
in the middle of a bunch of houses, nowhere near.
No, I would say they tend to spread only vegetatively. They don't spread long distance. If you live in river forest or next to a forest preserve, don't plant it. I would say eradicate it from your yard because it doesn't seem to spread long distances. I may be wrong about that, but it seems to be only around suburban or homes, residential areas is where it is.
Stay with burning bushes.
No, that actually spreads farther because the birds spread. Sorry. I've killed it in Missouri. It's come up in my grandfather's old house, and in my woods, I have a small woodland there, and I'm in a conservation stewardship program. Your tax dollars are paying me to remove invasive species and thin out the understory. I'm going beyond the minimum goals for it. I'm actually trying to bring native plants back in much more. I'm going to make sure that you get your money's worth out of me. And that one of the trees or shrubs I've come across is burning bush.
How do they propagate? Birds?
Yes, they have a seed. The birds eat the berries, and then they spread.
But the male burning bushes don't have berries, I think, yes.
I don't know. Giants remain bush. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But it doesn't matter per se as long as
You got to stay.
No, I know, I mean, that's the reason, decorative plants like that are extremely popular, and, but some of them are.
So where would you recommend that we go to see native plants in their glory?
Well, if you want to see, I would say go to Wolf Road Prairie, or go to one of the Illinois natural sites. Go to Medallion out in Joliet, or Will County. Nachusla is another one, where they have bison. But yeah, find they have in Illinois, there's an inventory of all the Illinois national remnant prairies, and go to one of those. I would say go to Schulenburg Garden in Morton Arboretum, the Orland Grassland and the Forest Reserves. So those are several sites. I should put that on it. I have the resource, but the resource. I should put a link to the all the Illinois remnant prairie sites.
Add it and email it to like Cleo or David,
Okay.
and we will get it distributed.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a question, specific, my record then. So if I want to add native plants to my garden, and I have a big yard, not I have a big yard.
Mhm.
Is it essential that I remove all the non-native plants?
Yeah, I would say, take out a section and make it, try to make it pure native. Yeah, meaning only natives.
Section.
Yeah, do a section. You can intersperse the tougher natives into non-natives. One of them you could do, people don't like to, a lot of people don't like to hear this, but you could use a species like, or you use common milkweed, for instance. That thing is pretty tough. It will grow against a lot of non-natives. I mean,
Which one?
common milkweed. It's
Oh,
called.
I have a lot of that.
Oh, well, there you go. That's the type of plant. That's the type of plant that would, if you want to intersperse them with non-natives, you have to find the toughest natives. There are a few of them out there, but if you really want a diverse native garden, you need to segregate a section out and only put the natives in there. And it will make it easier to maintain and because you're going to get crossover from your non-native plants, and it would be easier to maintain that way. And plus, it will also give the plants more protection. They self-seed or whatever. You'll have a little sanctuary. So yeah.
So is one of the challenges groups like Wild Ones and other people doing woodland restoration in particular, is one of the challenges educating people to know, to not only to what a native plant is and why it's valuable, but how to do find other forms of beauty? Because we've grown up thinking daffodils and tulips, that these are normal spring flowers, and they're really not for this area.
Yeah, I would say you would need more than education. You probably need you ever hear, anybody hear of Aldo Leopold?
No?
Yeah.
Yes? You probably need more than just education. You need a new ethic. Although Leopold was a professor, a forester, and professor at University of Wisconsin. He's one of the first forest preservers in the country. He worked in Mexico in the early part of the century, but he's sort of the father of wildlife management. He started out in game management. He developed the principles for it. He was a hunter himself. But later in his life, he bought a small piece of property in Baraboo, Wisconsin. And he came to the conclusion that we had to go beyond just protecting wildlife, things that we hunt and fish for, that we had to live in a community with all plants and animals. And so he took this farm. It's actually still in existence. He died in the late 1940s. He died fighting a fire on a neighbor's property. But before his death, he wrote a book that was published after his death called A Sand County Almanac. It's in the resources. And in this book, he came up with the land ethic. And the land ethic says that you should try to live with all, in a community, with all plants and animals. And to consider them that not as something to extract all the time or use to your own benefit, but to live with them and prosper with them. He wanted people to have a relationship with nature. And that's what, in order to really, we need more than just education, we need a new moral ethic. I mean, we don't own people anymore because the ethics changed. Women can vote now because the ethics changed. And that's what has to come about. We look at areas, any piece of landscapes as something to extract something from, to use it and for our own benefit. And it's a very selfish thing to do. It's great for us to a certain degree in the short term, but there's some really severe consequences in it. And one of it is the state of the climate in this planet right now. So so I would say you read Sand County Almanac or yes.
I have another question because I am in favor of tulips and those kinds of things. Well, I like color and texture, and so could I have it both ways?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, so okay. My thought is perhaps if I just sort of can take my tulips into pots for a year and then through the whole.
Well, you could do that, yeah. But actually, tulips are pretty benign plants. They just, I mean, the plants you have to worry about are the ones that are just go out of control. And
Like peppermint.
And there's a spectrum of this. There's plants that are aggressive, and that are plants that are invasive. And so there's a spectrum. The ones you have to work, when they grow to the point that they are harming other plants and animals, that they're crowding out, especially the native species. Those are the ones that you should not, I don't care how good, beautiful they look. Have you heard of the firefly petunia? This is a new one. This is a new. Yes, this is a hybrid plant that's just coming out. It's for sale now. Probably can't buy it. It's probably been swept up already. But this plant, it's a petunia which glows. It has bioluminescence. Bioluminescence is a chemical. It's a chemical reaction. It's like what a firefly does. It has a chemical reaction that produces its own light. And so this firefly petunia glows in the dark. It glows all the time. So, the horticulturalists are really excited about this. They took the genes of 5 mushrooms. They took the DNA of 5 mushrooms that have bioluminescence, and they combined it with this petunia. So now this petunia glows. So this is a totally new, endeavor, and I'm sure that people will probably snap this thing up like crazy. Now, supposedly they considered the possible effects. Will it be invasive, whatnot? Petunias in general are pretty benign. They don't, so they don't think it's going to be an invasive problem. But the other thing is, my thought is more about moths. Moths, they work at night. And they are, ambient light or unnatural light really screws them up. You turn your porch light on, they're flying around all the time. They lose all sense. They should be out pollinating plants and whatnot, but they're flying around the light all the time. So what will it do to moths if this glows on them? Okay.
And you have some things to pass around.
Oh, yeah.
And the proclamation.
Oh, yeah. This is native plant, National Native Plant Month. And you think we have, blue state, red state problems politics, people hating each other. Well, this is one thing that everybody agreed on, Republicans and Democrats, and that is National Native Plant Month. And so Illinois had its own proclamation. They've done it a couple of years ago. That's Pritzker's deal. I don't know if people want to read it. It's online if you want to read it. It's basically, you know, it's just a proclamation. It doesn't have a whole lot of action behind it. When they started action, when people started streaming, like if they said all farms have to have pollinator strips or something like that, or plant so many milkweeds, then the streaming will start. Yes.
I think our love of tulips came from a great advertising campaign from the Netherlands.
Well, yeah, that tulips have a great story in itself. That's probably the first financial crisis was caused by the tulip scare. No, I think you know, human beings just like color and symmetry. And I don't know what the original tulip looked like because it has been so worked on it that it's hard to say what the original tulip looked like. And
Look at like tulips in like old mountain, like built like a painting, and they're just, they're gorgeous.
yeah, well, yeah, I know, and especially, you know, one thing about native plants is they don't, you know, they don't have the same color and intensity that the non-native, the cultivars, the non-native cultivars. It's hard to compete with that when people look at aesthetics like that when that's their main concern.
I just need to say that next Sunday will be Dr. Veronica Glanza from Bacon Lake coming to give us about the environment stuff. And she should be doing that in adult ed as well as in the service she'll be teaching. So, with that.
Well, yeah, I said since you brought religion back, you know, it says in Genesis that, you know, man was supposed to, you know, was given to subdue the planet and to dominate it. Well, that may be so, but does dominate mean destroy? Because that is the point where in some cases it's beyond domination.